Hello, I'm Carl Seidel, host of The People's View. Before we get started with our guest, I'd like to just mention something about the Nashua City Republican Committee. We are having a meeting every Thursday, second Thursday of the month at the Senior Club. And if anybody wants to come, wants to hear about what the politics are going on and what plans that the Republicans are making, come to the meeting once a month. And if you're interested in running, we are having educational classes to show you what you have to do if you want to run for any of the offices that will be coming up this year. So, but now we talk to Fred Teeboom. Fred?
You didn't say they needed money. You need money to run.
Well, that's true. They'll find out. That's part of the training. how to get money. And you've been around long. You were here being an alderman at one time, so you ran, so you know all the problems.
It takes about $5,000 to run for alderman.
Depends on what you want to do.
For alderman?
Yeah.
About $5,000. Takes about, well over $100,000 now to run for mayor. I mean, that's been pumped up quite a bit, maybe 100.
Oh, yeah, for the mayor. If you're running for the mayor, it's a lot more.
150,000, and for representative, what's that cost? What did it cost you?
It didn't cost me enough because I did a lot of door knocking and meeting people. And it cost me less than the amount I had to report. What was that? It was a couple $1,000.
That's it for rep?
Yeah. It's gone up since then, I know. But this is in the... from 2008 when I first got elected to 2018.
How many mailings did you have?
Yeah.
The mailings is what cost you.
I know. I didn't mail a lot. I gave away a lot. I gave literature away when I did the door knocking, so it had something. That's another way of approaching it. I mean, it was at that time I had retired, so I hadn't that much income, so I didn't go into it heavily. You don't have to. So, I mean, some people do a lot, and it's nice and informative. I also started this show here so that people who didn't hear about, got to meet a lot more of the candidates.
And that's for a representative. What about a senator?
The Senate is more.
Well, of course,
it's a bigger area.
There's 400 representatives. I think there's 14 reps?
No, 24.
In Nashua. So
in Nashua, it was 14 at one time. It's down to 13 now.
13. So think about it.
Yeah.
There's 13 representatives in the city.
Right.
There are 15 aldermen in the city, so it's about comparable. But as a senator, you cover a much broader area.
That's right.
So the state senate is quite a bit more.
Well, there's one senator that does cover 6 of the 9 wards, and the other senator covers 3 plus several towns that go on.
Avard covers several towns.
Yeah, but he covers also 1, 2, and 5.
And I noticed that to attend his little get-togethers, his little campaign stops, $100 a ticket.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And the new ones, I got $150 a ticket.
It was we were around $50 when I got started.
$100 a ticket now. Anyway, let's go on.
Yeah, Fred Teeboom.
Yes.
You have a good reputation here of going through, looking at problems here in the city.
Yeah.
And you had a suit against the city. Can you tell our audience what that was and what happened with
this is the second lawsuit against the city. The first one, I think, was 2017.
Right.
And it's pretty much on the spending cap. The spending cap that we passed in 1993. We've had several programs on that. So hopefully people are familiar with that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the new generation is not. I don't have anywhere near the response on this lawsuit that I've had in previous lawsuits.
Mm-hmm.
As an example, when I went to court,
mm-hmm.
I think there were 2, maybe 3 people in the audience on my side.
Uh-huh.
And there was some 5 or 6 city people
on the
defense side. So the interest in the spending cap, in putting a cap in spending, is dwindling. The interest in spending ever more is rising.
Yeah.
So me coming here with a spending cap that we passed in 93, that we litigated in the past, that I litigated in 2017, litigating again, it's falling on less and less ears.
Mhm.
It resonates with less and less people. And the courts note that. And if you're a judge, you look at the audience, and there's a lot, 10, 20, 30 people, if it's all filled up, you pay attention. If there's 2 or 3 people, or often nobody,
So he doesn't pay attention.
they don't care. That's the number 1 problem. Number 2 problem, that's the major problem, is
Right.
when you sue the city on spending, you're dealing with the budget. I didn't bring the budget book this time. As you know, it's a 400-page document.
Uh-huh.
It takes years to get fully familiar with as an outsider
Right.
or as an alderman. It's
Mhm.
basically like pretty much an outsider to understand that budget book. And if you deal with city employees, they're really only familiar with that part of the budget book that affects their department.
Right.
On this last lawsuit, as an example, I had David Fredette. You interviewed David, right? He used to be a former
Dave's been around a long
treasurer,
time.
been a long time. He got elected just 2 years before I got elected back in 1993.
Hmm.
He's been around a long time. He's been a treasurer a long time. I asked him to help me with the presentation of the brief to the court. He helped me some, but he had difficulty understanding the details.
Really?
Yeah, because he's a treasurer.
Right.
So the ins and outs of how a cap on spending works out through the budget, in principle, it's simple. You just say, I got a budget this year,
Right.
I can increase it by a cost of living index, and that's the budget next year. What can be simpler?
Mm-hmm.
Until you look at the details. To begin with, what is a budget?
Okay.
It
So
has to be defined in terms of accounts, and then you get into which accounts are based on taxes, which accounts are based on grants, which accounts are based on fees, which accounts are based on bonding and debt. You go on and on. And then you realize this budget is a very difficult thing to deal with in detail. That's the problem. So when you go to court, you have a judge. In this case, I Judge Stemple. Judge Stemple was also my judge in 2017. So you figure he's kind of up to date.
yeah.
Okay? But you think about these judges. There's in Hillsborough County here, Spring Street, the southern
Right.
part of Hillsborough County, there's only 2 judges.
Huh.
He and Jacqueline, a woman. And he takes all the municipal cases and the right to know law cases. He takes most of the, the assault cases and people, the sexual harassment cases, that kind of thing. They kind of split along that line. But when I come in with a background that is based on about an 8-inch stack of research papers that I've done.
Yeah.
I measured the stack just before I came here of paper sitting on a chair on a support and getting me prepared for this case. It's about 8 inches tall.
Really?
Yeah, here's an example. This
Yeah,
is
I
just part
see
of it.
that.
There's a book. That's a summary of some of the stuff. You got to be prepared. You
Right.
got to have all the data. You got to have all the calculations. You go through the calculations. You go to the examples. You do the spreadsheets. You try to present this to a judge. Now, you can tell to the judge they like to talk about, did you kill somebody?
Right.
Were you at the scene of the crime? Those kind of things, How did you harass someone? What did you do? When we come up with figures about budgetary items in this budget, their eyes glaze over. They don't care. So they turn it over to staff. In this case, I got the decision Tuesday, a few days ago. And guess what? The decision, right here, it's only about 5 pages. 5 pages based on my 8 inches of background. And it basically said, you failed to prove your case.
Really? What did they? How did they say that though? I mean, how?
Well, how they say it? There's a couple of places. It says here that the court finds that the plaintiff, which is me, failed to meet his burden of proving that the city's manner of calculating the base amount used in preparing the budget was improper. There's no detail behind that statement.
There's no?
It just says we have determined that you have not proven your case.
So aren't they required to be more specific?
They're not required to be anything. They can make it a one page. They also said is the city controller is an experienced
Right.
administrator. Because the city controller's expertise in this area, he should belong. It is reasonable to assume that he knows what he's doing. It's the city controller that I'm suing. He's a defendant.
Yeah.
How can you have a finding that says, well, you ought to trust the city controller, he's experienced, and you're just a nobody, you're just a citizen. In fact, they mentioned here, I'm the only guy that made the presentation. I didn't have an expert. Well, I didn't have an expert because David Fredette was my advisor, didn't want to go and be a witness. I could have forced him to be a witness, but I didn't want to force him. It is very difficult to get expert witnesses because the expert witnesses work for the same outfit you are trying to sue.
Right. Right. So you got stuck on that, and are you going to do anything? Is there
Yes,
anything?
I filed here it is. This morning, I filed a motion for reconsideration. See that? Not reconsider, motion for reconsideration. If you know how to do this, and you got to learn how to do this, you no longer walk into a courtroom, type something up, handwrite something, and hand it to a clerk. No more. You've got to go through what they call a turbo court judicial electronic filing system.
Oh, really?
You got to get a log on, your password. You got to be screened. You got to have a case number assigned. You got to type all this up. You got to go through a whole bunch of questionnaire items to make sure it does get filed. It got to be in a PDF format, this, that, and the other and things. Oh, well, to learn that system. And that's how you file a case.
Right.
When you go to court, you got to present it through a thing called case lines. That's an electronic means of presenting the case. The problem with that is there's no training. They train the attorneys. They train the staff for attorneys who basically teach the attorneys. You're running post se into a court case, meaning you represent yourself. The judge says to, when I said to the judge, I'd like to bypass this case line. If I say, okay, you don't have to use the case line. Because Bolton, the opponent, also didn't know how to use the case line.
Oh, really?
He won't go on. But then the judge said, I don't really understand. This training. Did you get trained? I said, no, I didn't get trained. He said, well, there's a very nice lady who trains. So the day after the court case, when I'm supposed to file some papers that the judge requested, some further information that they never used, of course.
Yeah.
I walked to the court, I talked to the clerk, I said, Madam Clerk, I'd like to sign up for training the case line so I can present the case. You know what she says to me? We don't train non-lawyers. Read the instructions that we send you.
Oh, no. What good is that?
And the instructions they send you are indecipherable. I'm telling you, it is not easy. I've done this before. I've been in the court on Penachuk thing. I've been in the court on a right to local law case. I've been in the court on an illegal taking by the school department. I've been in the court twice on this. I've been in the Supreme Court twice. So you figure I'm pretty familiar with this stuff, and I am. But I'm telling you, it is not easy.
No.
And when you're all done, and you present there's reams of data, and two memorandum of law, called trial memorandum, backup briefings that look this thick. This is a backup. This is a briefing. It's all in PowerPoint. 25 pages of briefing. You go through all that and it says, we are not persuaded that
really?
the city is acting properly. Now, I don't think the judge even looked at this. I think he's got staff. And he says, take this stuff and take a look at it. And the staff can either deal with it or they cannot.
Right.
And I put in my motion of reconsideration, I said, they're following relief, okay? I request that the court assign legal staff with intellectual ability and experience to understand and research the substantial information I provided.
Good.
And advise the judge properly how to interpret budgetary considerations like a spending cap. Now, you know what's going to happen in this motion to reconsideration?
They're going to deny it.
I'm going to say denied. So I can talk to you about this on the program. I can maybe write the article in the Union Leader. You know, what's really serious problem here also, and people complain about this,
Right.
we no longer have a telegraph. We no longer have a
Right.
local newspaper.
Right.
I couldn't even advertise that there was a court case set so people could
Right.
attend. Did they
Right.
even know to attend?
Right.
That's several people call me. Says, we didn't know there was a court case. You would have shown up. Why'd you tell us? I don't, I'm up till late at night trying
Yeah,
to put
doing
the
that.
end points on my briefing. I said, I haven't got time to send like all these phone calls. I mean, the loss of the telegraph is a serious problem. This is not just Nashua. If you look at the Union Leader,
Well,
it doesn't cover Nashua.
There's supposedly 2 places that cover that now, I should say.
Yeah.
I can't even remember their names, but they're
The Granite Rock?
No, Granite Rock is one of the groups that talks about a lot of the stuff that goes on either in the city or the state.
On the podcast?
No, it's, what the heck is it on the website that comes up? Because I noticed they're talking about things like cases that come up. But I guess they do it for free. Or
They
what.
talk about all the cases? Or just the
No,
Nashua cases?
They focus mostly on Nashua, the ones that I see.
Well, maybe after the program we can talk about that. You can give me.
Yeah.
I found the Granite Rock. And in fact, Laurie Alderman, who's the program, did a very nice article on my behalf. It was made to Union Leader, which she put it on with a picture under the, like a guest editorial.
Yeah.
But the Union Leader does not focus on Nashua.
No, it doesn't. It's hard to get something in there.
And problem, hard to get something in there. It is just a problem. So here you are, an individual. Now, do you want to go hire an attorney?
But well, one minute, you mentioned Laurie Ortolano.
Yeah.
She's now been successful with 2 suits against the
You know how much money
city.
she spent?
I know, too much, she said.
She's into the hundreds of thousands.
Right.
She's beyond $200,000,
Really?
or maybe just below it. But she told me she's got to stop
Oh, yeah.
because her husband is finally putting a stop to it. Now, her husband is well off. He's very successful. But even with lawyers, you don't win a case. And even the ones she won were really minor. I don't think they were major. They were right to no law cases. And a case where she got thrown out, she got a criminal trespass order where she tried to get into the legal.
Right, right. I know.
Well, I got a criminal trespass order by the Republican City Committee
Really?
when I attended a meeting in the Marriott. A year ago, I couldn't go for a year into the Marriott because they said I shouldn't be in a meeting. You know why? I didn't like Trump. And you got a lot of Trump supporters in the Republican City Committee. Sorry. A criminal trespass case is easy to file.
Huh. Well, I was just wondering what you think you could do to that. So you want to get a group together so that they're looking at that, and you can't do it all by yourself.
I was a very active member in the Republican City Committee.
Right.
And they were a very good outfit.
Right,
And you've been a member for many years.
right.
It's deteriorated.
Well, we're starting all over again.
It's like starting all over again.
Yeah.
National Taxpayers Association was a very vibrant organization, started in '93. The spending cap would have never passed a referendum if it hadn't been for the National Taxpayers Association.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't found it. I just joined it early on. I'm not a great organizer. I'm basically into, court cases, data,
But you're individual.
Details.
You don't get a whole bunch of people to work
I
with you.
do. I got 5-6 people always work with me, but
yeah.
I'm talking about how to set up a 300 to 400 people organization. Takes organizational skill.
Yeah.
It's a unique ability that a lot of people think they have. You have to be very charismatic. You have to be much of a people person.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to go to any individual and convince them what you do is right and join you.
Mm-hmm.
That's very difficult to do.
It is.
And it's a very
It's very
precious,
difficult.
it's a very precious characteristic.
Mm-hmm.
If you're successful on it, then you'll be a very successful politician, because the good politicians get people around them. Now, once you get elected, it's a whole different story.
Mm-hmm.
Now people track you to see what you did. I support the Broad Street Parkway. In fact, I'm the one that sponsored the original bond,
Mm-hmm.
like a $29 million bond. And a lot of my conservative supporters, I'm financially conservative, obviously, spending cap, a lot of my supporters deserted me. They thought spending money on the Broad Street Parkway was frivolous spending.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I could see the point,
Mm-hmm.
but I was looking at the future
Mm-hmm.
of the city.
I think you're right. There's a lot of things that they're not looking at the future. They're looking at it individually, a separate thing, and they can kill it by imaginary problems.
And they look at how it's perceived by the people that support
Right.
them.
Right.
I'll tell you, an exception is Kevin Avard.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Avard does what he thinks is the right thing to do. I
Right.
don't think he necessarily looked at it, do people support me or not?
Mm-hmm.
And he stays in office. He's able to get reelected.
Mm-hmm.
I got tired out the first time I ran. I got elected twice.
Mm-hmm.
Then I ran a third time, and I got defeated. Now, my
Because
own
of the-
fault.
Because of that parkway or what?
No. And I was gone for about 5 years. I had to make a living. My wife said,
Sure.
you're spending all your time in this automatic stuff. And when you go back to work? And I said, you're right. So I could have resigned the first time. The second time, I went the entire 4 years. But then I got tired of it. It does wear you down.
It does.
I mean, these things do. Everything takes time. Every issue takes investigation. It's like this case. I can concentrate this case, and I can spend hundreds of hours on this case. Just this case. Hundreds of hours, which I have. But that's the case. There's no other case. If you're an alderman, now you're not spending hundreds of hours on one case, but you can spend tens to 20s of hours in any one issue, and there may be 10, 15 issues. We could talk about some. The development up in the what is that? The landfill, not the toxic site.
Oh, yeah.
What's the name of that?
On the river. I can't remember the
Okay.
name of it.
Well,
but
you and I get
we
it
were
all.
just talking about it on Wednesday. That
Yep.
was one of the items I was talking about in the mayor's little...
It's a big
discussion.
thing. The Ward 1 is going to have, the fellow
Right.
in Ward 1, he's going to have a meeting a ward meeting on the 9th of this next week about just that topic. That's a very interesting topic. The developer's putting in something like 250 condos
Yeah,
and 250 apartments.
right. That's an awful lot down there.
That's a lot down there, and they have access to the river. But none of them are subsidized. They're all going what you call market rate. And if you remember yesterday,
But I thought they had a regulation that they have to do a certain percentage.
they made a deal that for every apartment, the condos get nothing.
Yeah.
For the apartments, instead of giving them a subsidy, the developer is giving the city of Nashua $37,000 per apartment. So the $37,000, they can misspend it or something else. But
Really?
the fact when you rent that apartment, you can pay market rate. Right now, there's $1,800 for one. You pay about $2,000 for a two-bedroom apartment. And remember the ward meeting? People complained about that, and they're correct. $2,000 a month is $24,000 a year. If that's 30% of your gross income, that means you have to have a gross income of around $65,000 to $70,000 a year. That is about $30 to $35 an hour. There are a lot of people in Nashua who do not make $35 an hour. Now you did when you were working. You were an engineer, right? If I remember. I was an engineer. I still have a master's degree in engineering. I was making well over $35 an hour. Even 20 years ago. But the point is, a lot of people can't afford
Oh,
to live
sure.
in Nashua. And what's happening is the gentrification. It's happening everywhere. In Brooklyn, it's happening in New York. Gentrification. People can afford to take over the areas that were before degraded, poor people's areas.
Well, there are a lot of things wrong with this problem. I hope we have a good meeting. And Fred, we're running out of time.
Yeah.
But the capping of the stuff is going to be done there, and then they're going to put a field over it.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
it's going to be like Buffalo 10 years ago. Remember that? When they dug up the contamination and people actually were getting sick there.
It happened here in Nashua. We had, when I first went back in 1993, one of the schools, I think it
Yeah.
was the Searles. They dug up a playground and found cans of old cans of beef. The point is, how do you do it? The modern technique is you got to dig down deep enough.
Right.
You got to cap it
Right.
heavily enough. The problem is they're next to a river. So no matter how deep you can go 10 miles down and it'll still leak into the river. So the point is how, but you can't leave that stuff big.
We'll
You got to
see.
be able to use it.
Fred, we're going to have to have you come back,
Well,
see what happens to your
lawsuit,
your lawsuit, whether you're
the
going to
motion to reconsideration.
reconsideration, and see if you get people
Denied.
to help you.
Denied.
Your best. Oh, don't say that right now.
I can.
But Fred, keep it up, and we need more people like you who are going to fight for some rights.
Hopefully, in the Republican City Committee, you can bring some logic back to was a recent leadership,
Right.
and tell them to stop kicking people out.
Right.
Okay, with a criminal trespass charge because they didn't agree with his political position of Mr. Trump.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you again. It's always
Thank you for
nice to
inviting me.
talk to you.